there's something when I'm really listening to you in what also you're saying in the way that we can relate. It has a lot to do with the misunderstanding of self, the attachment sometimes to certain aspects of self, especially when they're fearful and they have a lot of somatic activation in the body. We then attach to it being a part of us. And actually, if we can take a moment sometimes to see that's the fear speaking. The fear speaks in this language. This is the way that the fear activates through my body. But it's just a program that's running that I can actually disconnect with and see, okay, yeah, fear was running for that moment. Jealousy was running for that moment, which brought all these other different feelings. Rage was running for all that moment, but actually the decoding, the underneath program was, oh shit, I was super vulnerable here. Again, how often are we coming up to the surface, but actually when we look at reality, we're seeing that everyone is dealing with so many different challenging experiences and expressions.
Yo, 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 lovers. Welcome to Sex, Love, and Everything in Between. We're the O'Neills. You're here with Meg and Jacob.
And this is the place we have really uncensored conversations about sex, intimacy, and relationships. We're super excited you're here. Enjoy this episode.
Hey, lovers. Welcome to this episode. As you can see, Meg has been kicked out and it's bro time for this episode today. I'm really, really excited to introduce this man. This is a guy I've only recently met but formed a deep bond with. For me, it's so beautiful when I meet someone and I get to experience almost a depth of understanding through the way that they walk in the world. And it was almost like a feeling of like, oh, I'm not alone in the things that I feel and the way that I see the world. So it's just a real fucking honor actually to introduce to you Velan Cadden from One Movement. Welcome, bro.
Yo, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Yeah, thank you. Velan is a movement devotee and he's also an activator for cultural change. And like the depth of his work is so incredible, but it's also the range in which he delivers his work as well. Before we started the podcast, we were talking about this, Velan works with NRL teams and he also works deep in the mystery work with women as well. And this is, I feel like you could not get a more polarizing experience of like the deep work that women do and then also working with like these big NRL teams that are in the spotlight doing, the warrior work of rugby league. Huge stuff. All of that's great. I want to talk a little bit about like what I loved about meeting Velan and what I really, really appreciate about him before we dive into the topics that we've got today. We did our facilitator training for the Embodied Man Institute. These are the guys that are stepping into facilitation at the Gathering of Men. And I hadn't even met Velan. I didn't even know about his land. And my bro Ryan suggested, hey man, we should go and do it. We should go and do the training here. This land's got real power. It's really, really beautiful and it'll hold the brothers deeply and provide, the experience that we want. And I was like, cool, I trust you, man. I got an email, checked out the photos, and normally I just filter everything through my body. I'm like, is there any resistance to this? And the answer was no. So we literally had 2 or 3 emails back and forth and it was locked in. And when we got to the land, it was literally 5 kilometers away from where I've done some of my deepest work here in Australia, up out the back of Mullumbimby. And I just got to land. I was like, this is a really special place. And it's not a special place just because, it's a special place because of the work and the tending and the custodianship that is provided by you, bro, and your family, and the way that I see you move on the land, or move with the land rather. So man, we had the most incredible time. Velan ran a series of workshops, which all of the guys at the training they were all their favorites as well, bro. So you've won over some solid fans in the guys that are doing the training. And yeah, man, there was some really key points. I told Meg so much about you and the way that you deliver your work, and how important it is for me to have bros like you coming into the men's workspace and delivering something that I believe is deeply, deeply missing. And that's what we're going to speak about a lot today, is around relationships to the feminine, relationships to women, and how there is a deep, deep journey for men to go on in our reverence, in our healing, in our in the way that we communicate, not just with our words, but with our actions and our energy when it comes to women and Mother Earth in general. So, bro, I feel like that's a pretty solid intro. Is there anything else that I've forgotten, or anything else that you'd like to let the guys know about yourself?
Oh, that's awesome, bro. Thank you.
Epic, man. Epic. I'd love to kick it off then with this concept of like resentment in relationship and holding that in the energetic body. I know you said you got a bit of a story that you'd love to sort of lead us in with, and resentment has been a huge part of my journey, being a nice guy in the relationship and not really being connected to my desires, or not really knowing how to say no and hold boundaries with my lover. And it's created a lot of challenging times for us. So I'd love to hear from you, bro. What is this story, and how do you feel it relates to this resentment piece?
Thanks, bro. Thanks for the intro. And I just want to name thanks for your courage with the opening these deeper layers of the work that I feel are the foundation for staying in healthy relationship. So yeah, I'd like to start always with my own experience, because I feel like when we turn towards the material that we're escaping from through usually pornography, Instagram, social media, all the things that actually numb us and shut us down, when we have the courage to look at what is brewing in the somatic architecture of the fabrics that we dwell in, then it opens a pathway of healing. It opens a pathway of evolution. And I'd like to, for a moment, reorient what courage is, which is, how do we be with, in the simple moments, not in the grand expansion, but in the simple moments of our life, in the simple moments within our relationships, how do we tend to the fear, the complexity of emotion that we don't know how to sit with and feel? So what I'd like to open is a inquiry. How do we be with? And what are the designs, what are our personal practices that support us to be with what is blocking the energy flow in our relationship? We spoke about before, there really can't be true intimacy and all the juicy bits that we want to skip to in sexuality and relationship if we're not cleaning, sweeping our own home. So how do we begin to sweep out, but also become exceptional plumbers of the deep, dark material that dwells in the space that we don't want to look at? So I've been a little bit cryptic here, and I'd like to just like really hone in and zone in, laser beam to the places of when I am feeling uncomfortable in myself. How often do I try and integrate that through my partner, through my wife, the things that I can't stand to hold in the fabrics of my own body? Where does anger, frustration, resentment, manipulation, and energetically poking come out through me because I can't actually deal with the fear or the unsettledness of, or even on a deeper level, the disappointment with the amount of distraction that's actually going on and not actually pointing me in the direction of the purpose of what I really know is possible in the deepest parts of my being.
Yeah, man. When you said the disappointment, I was like, that's the one for me. If I work from home, so does Meg, and I'll I'll go into my office and there'll be some days where I distract for majority of the day. I'm scrolling, I might be messaging, I'll send a few memes back and forth. I'll get half of my list done. I'll forget to do something. I'll drop the ball on a few things, and there'll be disappointment in myself. And then I'll come out to connect, and I can't. I'm still withholding. There's this like shame, and then I don't want to let Meg in. I don't want to be intimate because I'm disappointed in myself, and I can't stand there in front of her as a man that's done what he knows he's here to do, bro. And that's really shining a light on my, more recently with all of the extra responsibility I've got at the moment with what I'm creating. I'll come out and I won't feel complete or whole leaving my office and closing the door, and there'll still be a part of me that like needs to get more done because I've been and I look back and I'm like, there's a part of me that was distracted through especially social media for me. That's my big one. And then that deeply affects our intimacy, bro, massively. She really wants me after work. She wants to be with me, eat food, talk, play a board game. There's so much around intimacy that really fuels her life. And there's been many moments over the past few weeks where I haven't been able to give that to her, and I push her away, and then I resent her for wanting more time with me. And I'm like, but I've got to work. But then there's this disappointment of like, well, Jacob, you spent 3 hours scrolling Instagram today. I don't know whether it's actually that you want to go and work or whether you just don't want to admit that you were distracted.
Yeah, I thank you for sharing that, and thanks for the vulnerability to just open that kind of next layer of material, which I feel is, okay, so, and I'm speaking to myself as well, I just want to really name the imperfection of myself, and all of what I'm going to speak to is based on the experience of feeling disappointed, the experience of what is, and this is really important, I'm going to pause here. So when it lands for you, you can really inquire about what is underneath. Because this is really important. When we look at resentment, when we look at frustration, when we look at anger, when we look at the projection on our partners, always what is underneath is a vulnerability. So the way that we actually access the deeper material is, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, but what am I really? I'm feeling vulnerable because I'm disappointed in myself. I'm feeling vulnerable because I actually can't hold the material of my life. And as we step into more leadership responsibility, there's more energy and more complexity of energy that we have to deal with. And if we can't deal with that, of course, on an energetic level, it bubbles out into anger, rage, frustration. But what's really underneath that is vulnerability. So once we access that vulnerability and we have the courage to actually name it, we can defuse it. And I feel like that's one of the most important aspects of, being in healthy long-term relationship, which is when those vulnerabilities that come out as tricky manipulation, that comes out as fuck you, how do I actually see that the finger that's pointing, there's 3 fingers pointing back to me saying, you're vulnerable. So the doorway here is, how do we name and how do we decode the surface reactions, which are actually deeper layers of vulnerability that are being called to be released into the field. And by releasing them, we liberate the energy and we can come back to what we know is important, which is actually, we're a team. When we relate, these are evolutionary pathways for us to grow. And the way that we evolve is by taking responsibility for the deeper layers that are bubbling under the surface of the reaction.
Yeah. Long-term relating, it requires that for it to maintain depth and intimacy. And that's, for me, man, like because I'm up here on the Gold Coast, I'm in and amongst it all with a lot of other personal development people. I see like there's such a strong focus, especially in the relating world, on this concept of polarity. And when you speak about intimacy, it's like there's this other texture to it that I think really is cultivated in long-term relating. And that's where, for me, some of my deepest healing moments have come from actually revealing the vulnerabilities that are beneath the reactions. And I don't know about you, but some of those reactions, like, I'm not proud of how I've reacted. And they've also been a catalyst for me to reveal the deeper truth. So there's been times where I pushed Meg away, not physically, but I'm like, I close off to her, I go stonewall, and then I'll move away from her. And then there's been times where I've done that and I've had to literally walk out the front door and walk halfway down the street and like be with myself and be like, Jacob, this is not the way. There's something you need to go and speak and share what's really going on. It might be something that's really frustrating me with work, or there might be a friendship dynamic I'm really struggling with. It might be my finances that I'm really struggling with, that I'm terrified to share with her, because my story is, if I reveal that, she'll find someone better. There's someone out there that's better at this, that can do what I can't. And that has been, those vulnerabilities, when I've brought them, that story is completely and utterly dissolved as well through her heart, and the love that she brings. And I think this is, for me, what I love about being in a relationship, especially like loving one woman deeply, is that one woman loves me deeply, and deeper than I've ever been loved. And it's all of those vulnerabilities and the stories that I make up around them to keep me safe, that she is like really, really been a part of my, like, a massive healing journey for me.
Thank you. And I feel like also something to bring up, which I feel like relates to all of the brothers, is what is our relationship to the beast? Because we know there's going to be moments where we don't know how to deal energetically, physically, with the emotions that are circulating in our body. And yes, volcanoes can be really supportive, but also we have to be aware of how the energy is going to come out and affect the energetic field of our relationship, and beyond that, our kids, if we have. And so something that I feel like is really important within that is, what is our relationship to the beast? To our own physical, dense beast, the beast that there are somatic signals always in our body, subtle and not subtle, but how do we begin to track when the heat in our body starts to rage, when something, because also our partners know exactly where to hit the don't hit this button, the red button, they know exactly how to hit that. Yeah. And I think it's really important for us to begin to unpack and hone in to the fine signals of our body that begin to go, I'm going to go into the red territory. And it's interesting because in professional sport, in rugby league in which I work, this is also, it's a really important aspect. What is your capacity to go into the red zone but not go into the emergency zone? Because the red zone is where you're going to be an enforcer, but the moment you go over, you'll get sent off. So just to widen out for a moment and share how it expands into, intense professional sport, but also the most fine and subtle places within the relationship. This is some of the keys are what we call somatic range, our capacity to be in rugby league, a killer for 90 minutes, and then afterwards go and hold our children and kiss our family. And then within the relationship, what is our capacity to rage and release energy that's being stored and misunderstood or not decoded in our own body? And then what is the way that we track the subtle signals so we can say, before the beast erupts and we lash out in rage at our partners, I'm feeling really vulnerable. I'm feeling really vulnerable that I distracted today on social media for 4 hours instead of doing the things that I know I should have done. I'm feeling really vulnerable because within the leadership that I'm stepping into, multiple people are asking me too many things, and I'm plugging into their energetic fields, and it's taking me into a place of overwhelm, and I don't know how to deal with it. The moment I take responsibility, the moment I track the subtle somatic signals and I offer them up into the relating, then immediately energetically I start to diffuse and decode the place that can send a relationship into separation, into fragmentation, into really harmful places. So I just want to widen for a moment and say that a somatic range is a profound principle that relates from high professional sport into the subtleties of keeping in love in relationship.
Yeah, I think that's so important, that somatic range. I know for a very long time I didn't have that relationship to the beast, and I just gulped it down, and I'd get my power fix through porn or through my own sort of self-destructive behavior with alcohol, and I didn't have kind of a conscious relationship with that the part of me that is the beast. Is that something that you see men consciously or unconsciously develop, or how do you see that playing out for men in the world?
Do you mean their relationship?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's really important to know that we all have a beast.
Yeah.
I think that's the first piece, is always the awareness and the attention, that because once awareness is present, then we have a choice.
Yes.
What are we going to do with this energy? The subtle somatic signal is my vulnerability is rumbling into rage, and I'm aware of that because I'm starting to get hot and red in my face. I'm starting to feel contracted in my fingers and my arms and my shoulders, and I can sense that I'm about to explode, essentially. So when I begin to track that to the first point of the signal, I'm in discomfort here. Something that my wife has shared, my partner has shared, I've actually misunderstood and taken personally. And that started, so also often these fragmentations, these splits in the energy come from misunderstanding. And I think that's also really important to understand, is that when we have the refined attention to decode the misunderstanding, then we can begin to untangle the layers of resentment, untangle the anger and the rage that wants to come out of a beast, and see that we're all deeply vulnerable. We're all moving with a profound shifting on the planet. And even just that, without having to deal with all the things that our life requires, is vulnerable. And the quicker we actually get to that place of going, this rage is not personal to her. It's actually my own deep vulnerability that I haven't actually given space to. I haven't held hands with my beast. I haven't held hands with what's underneath the anger and rage. And when I see that it's just my little boy that's requiring me to hold its hand and go, you got this. I just want to name, before this podcast, when I was here, you said something. You said, you got this to your beloved. And I just found that a really, just to name the things that your audience doesn't see just through the podcast, but there was something in that offering that created a harmonic field, that created this I love you and I see you, and it created a relatability and energy flow that I see is rare in relationship. To see the people that we care for, to see that we're on the same team. When we're on the same team, we can do incredible things, and it's present in the field here.
Thanks, man. That made me a little emotional. I was like, that's such a we've really made that a cornerstone of our relationship, is really supporting each other and being on each other's team. And Meg said to you, she actually drove, I forgot a whole heap of stuff when I came up to your place for the training, and I rang her, and I would never do this. What I would have normally done, and this is a classic kind of my shadow, I would have been like, I forgot the whiteboards, I forgot the butter, I forgot the chocolate, we always need chocolate, and I forgot this list of things, and I would have normally before I've developed this team aspect, I would normally have just said, all right, I'll wait for all the guys to go to bed, and then I'm going to drive down at night. I'm going to go and collect them, and I'm going to come back, and I'll probably get back at midnight, but that's okay. Then I'll quickly get a couple of hours sleep, and I'll be back up for the bros in the morning. But I rang Meg and I said, hey, listen, I've forgotten a whole heap of stuff. And like, she's pregnant. Like there was so many like ways I could have been like, no. And I said to her, I said, oh, do you mind if I, would you be able to bring these up for me? She said, I would love to. And the way that I felt her support in the work that I do, and the way that she's like really, really honored and been on my team with what I'm creating, it's changed my fucking life. And then, you know, in these like little moments where we're constantly like reaffirming, hey, we're doing good work. Hey, you're amazing. Hey, you got this. Hey, go and have an amazing call. Go and absolutely smash it today. It's such a, I never learned that growing up. That's not what I witnessed in my parents' relationship or in the relationships around me. So it's been a real cultivation, and that beast part of me, like that has been a huge relationship dynamic that is like, I never really got to know it until I started my men's work journey, started my work in ritual and rites of passage. And once I started to relate with that, I then learned how to bring that through or know when it was getting to a point where going from red to emergency. And that's a really good thing for a lot of men, because I see a lot of men see any kind of red as emergency and bad. They don't ever go into the red and explore their beast and explore what it's like to be in their primal body that wants to, like you said with the NRL, the killer. And that was something that I had to consciously cultivate personally. And I think it's something that a lot of men have to consciously cultivate a relationship with if they want deeper intimacy in relationships or more fulfillment in their work as well.
Yes, and I think there's something when I'm really listening to you in what also you're saying in the way that we can relate. It has a lot to do with our capacity to not disconnect, excuse me, I'm going to shift that. I'm going to say the misunderstanding of self. The attachment sometimes to certain aspects of self, especially when they're fearful and they have a lot of somatic activation in the body, we then attach to it being a part of us. And actually, if we can take a moment sometimes to see that's the fear speaking. The fear speaks in this language. This is the way that the fear activates through my body. But it's just a program that's running that I can actually disconnect with. And see, okay, yeah, fear was running for that moment. Jealousy was running for that moment, which brought all these other different feelings. Rage was running for all that moment. But actually the decoding, the underneath program was, oh shit, I was super vulnerable here. Again, how often are we coming up to the surface, but actually when we look at reality, we're seeing that everyone is dealing with so many different challenging experiences and expressions. And actually from that place, the attunement of relating and the way that we're going to actually engage with life in a much deeper way is that actually we see that all the surface reactions that often we take personal are never personal. They're just someone else's integration that they haven't been able to contain the emotion. They come out like that, we take it personally, but it's not. And through I also like to bring this concept of seership, our capacity to read what is underneath the field of reaction. Our capacity only emerges from knowing ourselves more deeply. When we understand the different somatic signalings in our own body, we begin to recognize those patterns in others. And, I guess what we're really talking about here is deeper landscapes of healing. We can only really access those spaces when we begin to be able to see under the surface. Because when we see under the surface, we can see that nothing in life is personal. It's just different layers of capacity to contain energy in our life. And based on our experience and relationships to our own practices, people have an incredible different range of how we're containing what is in the field.
Yeah. I love that, man. I love it. I love your articulation of this and of the nuance of this, and you sort of spoke into that attunement piece. I think that's a kind of a nice little sort of thread to follow now, is like what having a relationship with the beast provides, what actually decoding and unveiling these deeper layers of vulnerability and having the channel to then express them appropriately in relationship. I know for me, like the reactivity for some might be really explosive and violent. For now, my reactivity might just be a slight twinge in my body. I'm like, okay, there's a vulnerability there. Oh, that hurt. What am I taking personally? How can I reopen myself to the depths here, or what is beneath this? Another question that Meg and I love to ask ourselves is, what am I making this mean? And that is a really good one around, like, what story am I creating around this? If there is a vulnerability that I am fearing to go into, and the thing that I really love with being with these deeper vulnerabilities, or the deeper truth, is that then opens my field up, my awareness field, to be able to not necessarily read people, but feel what's beneath sometimes the words or the actions in the moment, and allows me to really, really deliver something that speaks to a deeper part of another human. So you spoke about that, you got this to Meg. Like, I know that the little girl in Meg was a perfectionist and had to get everything right. And for her, that's the story that plays out in her work. So for me, I know I'm here to just champion that little girl and speak to her and be like, hey, you got this. You're amazing. No matter what happens, you're going to do a great job, no matter what the result. And that has only come through me deepening and I guess accessing these layers of vulnerability and learning how to bring them through as well. Does that attunement, does that play out for you in your relationship, or do you see that playing out, like even with the guys in the NRL? What do you see? How do you see, I guess, the pathway to, understanding what's going on in our own body, of providing that attunement to what's going on in the environment that we're in?
Well, I think just to land in the deeper layers of the teaching, when we're attuned, which means I am not engaged with the cultural current, which is very powerful current in these times. Mm-hmm. I'm actually listening to the energetic information that I'm picking up through signals in my own body. And I'm telling you, when you begin to access the feeling underneath the cultural vibration and mental vibration, then you're teaching and you're sharing and you're attuning to what is present in the living field. Because so often people are coming with their mental stories and they're missing the mark. And this happens in relationship, this happens in organization, this happens in all places. How do we actually read an energy field? How do we read the subtleties which are there? Because always when I'm engaged with the moment, I'm engaged with what is present in the field, then I have immediate capacity to shift that energy, because I'm relating to what is, not what the mind is projecting into the field. And this is the sickness of society. People are projecting their mentality instead of slowing down enough to read the field. One thing I pick up in organization is that everyone's pretending to be so fucking busy when there's nothing to do. And what if everyone stopped for a moment, regulated, attuned themselves, because then they would actually pick up on what is present in the field and be able to actually shift a shitload more, because you're in touch with the living energy of what is. And for me, that is how I go into an NRL field of rugby league, and that's how I also work in deep intimacy with couples. How do you really attune to what's going on? Not, as you said, not what's being said, but the feeling underneath the what is not being said.
That's a skill. That is a really important skill to develop. And I just want to honor, if there's any men listening, like, the odds are stacked against you if you're operating in, modern society and you're really in it. I totally want to honor, the challenges that come with that. I'm lucky enough to work from home and really contain myself and really choose where my energy flows. But even so, when I open my phone, when I walk into the shops, when when the news is filtering through, even when I lock eyes with someone, it's like, I'm constantly in relationship with this frequency. So knowing how to actually slow down, knowing how to take space and connect back into myself is a really important practice for me personally. And what you were talking about this idea of slowing down so you can feel what's here. I think that is such a powerful tool to have to practice as a man or a human, regardless of whether you want to become a better lover or a better sportsman or a better businessman. Like, it's just actually a way to experience and really enjoy enjoy the texture of life. Like, for me, I've had moments where I'm like rushing to get somewhere and I'll stop, take a breath, and then I'll realize that it's a really beautiful day. And then all of a sudden the wind will sweep by and I'll smell the salt water, and I'm all of a sudden like, oh, life is beautiful, man. Oh, and it's like I'm remembering the beauty of this moment. And that allows me to then feel what's actually here rather than what's going on in here and I'm projecting out from the mind.
Thank you.
Yeah, man.
I'm actually just to acknowledge the character that I am, and going from that, I'd really love to jump into the topic of woman's blood, just to really shift directions for a moment, if that would be all right.
I would love to, man. I think we've really nailed that. There's been so much there, and we could get lost in that for the next 3 days. But yeah, this is something I'm really excited to hear from you, man, because it's something that I'm working with at the moment in regards to guiding men and supporting men on this journey as well. So let's shift gears and it's all yours, bro. Lead the way.
Yo. So yeah, I want to introduce a topic that I feel is one of the cornerstones of misunderstanding in the relating between the masculine and the feminine. And I'm blessed enough to work with an Indigenous leader named Kamita Vicente, and one of her bodies of work is called the School of Secrets, and is around the mysteries of women. And I am blessed to have a partner that's done the work with her, and I'm also connected with many other women that are doing the work around their blood. And it's been a profound mirror for the ancestral imprinting of shutting down women in the most powerful time of their cycle. So what I did want to open is the profound importance of understanding the rhythmicality of woman, the cyclical nature of woman, and what that will also mirror to us is, once I share a little bit about this will also go, well, okay, women have this profound cycle and what is ours. So I feel like that's a beautiful place we can lead into. But I feel what's really important for me to name here is understanding the different cycles of woman. Just simply, as a woman, she has a summer, a spring, an autumn, and a winter. And it's really important, like if we just hone into what is winter for a woman, a winter is when she's bleeding. It's that time of the month that she's actually ancestrally meant to shut down, close down, rest, dream, bring vision in, and her instinct, her intuition is extremely high in these moments, because woman is ruled by the moon, the movement of the moon. She's in tune with that. So obviously what comes after winter, which is really interesting, is the springtime. this is a really beautiful time to meet your woman. You know, it's a really, I'm careful when I say this. I'm going to say this very carefully. Mm-hmm. No, I'm actually not going to say it because I feel like it's I don't need to go there. But the spring is a beautiful time to sexually come together. It's a beautiful time to actually share and open, because she's in the most vibrant, or this rising energy vibrancy in her energy field. Now, if we shift over to autumn just for a moment, it's a time where she's starting to move towards winter, and she's less energetically probably susceptible for these deeper conversations, these things that need more articulation and mental power. And, you know, these cycles are extremely important to understand. So I know when's a good time to meet her and make love. When's a good time to speak about the finances? Probably not when she's bleeding and in winter. It's not a time to meet her. It's just energetically what to do. This is, you know, sometimes it's fucking blowing a gale outside and you wish it wasn't, but it is. Sometimes it's pissing down rain and you'd prefer to be at the beach, but this is what's happening. It's the same for woman. She is nature. She is Mother Earth. So sometimes she's not going to want to meet you in specific ways. And there is an ancestral resentment, deep, long time ago, old story, which is the masculine is pissed off at the feminine when she bleeds, because energetically she is shutting down, turning off. And the mirror of what happens is that what we haven't learned to integrate gets fucking mirrored back very strongly during the bleed, because energetically she is less open to deal with your shit. She has less capacity. So she's going energetically, not overtly, but subtly, she's saying to you, fucking go and do your work. Take responsibility for the mirror of what the bleeding time is reflecting back to you. And if you allow this, it can be one of the most profound evolutionary waves, but it is very tricky. Have a look for a moment in your relationship when the biggest fights happen, and for the majority of you, for 99% of you, I will point the finger to the place just before and during the bleed that where the most fracture, misunderstanding and resentment is generated around those points. When you understand the cycle, it gives you information. Nature is constantly giving instruction to us if we're open to it. It's the same as woman. The woman will reflect to us different aspects of ourself based on the rhythmical nature of her, which is Mother Earth, nature, because she is that.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense, man. How does that then like reflect back for a man's, like one of the things I speak into men is like, we're also nature, and you might have been put on this linear scale of like, I've just got to keep climbing the ladder or the stairs. I've got to keep on moving, and I've got to get better and better and better, make more money, achieve. How does understanding or respecting and having an awareness of a woman's cycle, like you've just explained, how does that then guide us back to our own rhythm as man?
That's a super beautiful question. And I think as you go on this journey, if you're courageous enough, because it requires attention and courage to look at the mirror. You know, I always say the most courageous work is to really look at the mirror of our own reflection. So thank you for that question, because I feel like through the woman has this profound energetic cycle. What it reflects back to us is, what is our cycle? We're also influenced by the moon. I'd say what I was speaking about then is the red tide, the movement of woman with her blood. And I would say the masculine has a white tide, which is also connected to the rhythms of the moon and has to do with our sexuality, how often we ejaculate, and the movement of our sexual energy. And this ties us into the widening of the framing out of only releasing energy through our cock, only ejaculating, because usually what happens is we regulate our discomfort, our unease through masturbation, through sex, through pornography. When we're feeling uncomfortable, we often release the energy through ejaculation. So how do we begin to learn the pollination of the different energy centers of our body to redistribute energy? So instead of just masturbating, ejaculating, how do we begin to, fuck someone with our mind? How do we have incredible conversations that fill us up, that stimulate us to essentially what we're looking at in the male system is how do we contain this profound sexual, sensual energy that we actually have just commodified through pornography, and how do we begin to actually cultivate it, have incredible conversations with our mind, have incredible moments of connection through the heart, enhance our instinctual intelligence and gut intelligence? How do we commune with spirit? How do we create dialogue with nature? Not just one way, because this is the sickness. The real, what we're talking about in attunement, if we just lean back in there again, is the reciprocal dialogues that happen with nature. The reciprocal dialogues that we're having with all of our energy centers, not just our mind and cock. It's like, and of course, the more we become aware of I want to come back to the somatic range, the more we can get in touch with the different energy centers that we can activate and create energetic flow and distribution, instead of going, I feel overwhelmed, I'm going to have a wank. It's like, okay, I feel overwhelmed. I'm going to move. I'm going to get in contact with different parts of my beingness and allow the redistribution of energy through incredible conversations, through going for a walk on the beach, through connecting to spirit in whatever way you do that, through having a fucking vulnerable sharing with your brother that actually liberates the energy instead of it getting caught in just mind and cock.
Yeah, that feels almost that's to me feels like embracing the responsibility of the energy that I carry versus what was really circulating for me was when you sort of said that reciprocity, that giving, receiving with nothing, so that nothing goes one way concept. Because like when in the past, I'm actually been pretty good. I haven't had too much of a challenge with masturbation and stuff like that. But I know in the past, what I was looking was for a release. I wanted to get something. I wanted to create some space in my body so I could relax. And there's like these two ways that I've found myself dealing with discomfort, is like either trying to get rid of or try to like deaden through consumption. How do I like drown out the feeling with social media or with food or with coffee? And then there's like this, I can't sleep or I'm feeling there's like this inability to hold this or circulate this energy. So the quickest and easiest way is porn and a wank. And for me, like you spoke about all those different ways, one of the things that's really become alive for me is music. I think not a lot of men sing or express themselves creatively, and that for me has been huge for my sexual energy of learning how to circulate it and express it in a new way. Going and actually just putting my feet on the grass and taking a few deep breaths. That's another way that's really worked for me. And the last one is actual like movement and actually learning how to like move my body, not in these rigid sort of exercise of fitness ways, but actually how does my body want to move and like work out the kinks and allow that energy to kind of like circulate or find its way into different parts of my body and create more space in my body that way as well.
Yeah, I think it's super beautiful what you're bringing through here, because there's a shift from gym culture, which is really beautiful, but the lacking pieces, which I feel like you're articulating really beautifully, is how do we get in contact with the material that needs transformation? How do we truly get in touch and transform? Because I just want to name, sometimes these reoccurring patterns come up and we're just like, how the fuck do I change myself? And I'm speaking to myself here. I've been in relationship 13 years, and there are still things that come through where I'm like, what the fuck? How do I change this? How do I move with it? And, just to say that for me personally, having a practice where I can get in touch with the feeling and the material, as you said, through music, through dance, but the key to these pieces is I have to be in touch with the feelings. Because the moment I get in touch with the feelings and then I create poetry or I create dance or I create a container to move with what is, it transforms it. But if I'm not in touch and I'm just pushing weights, but I'm not in touch with the undercurrent of feeling, I can't transform it. I can't move it. It stays stuck in the location that it's been shoved down to.
I love that, man. One of my favorite teachers is John Wineland, and he calls that practicing over a broken heart. It's when we do the thing, but we're not actually connected to the feeling.
Yo.
And that for me is huge. My grandfather's sick at the moment, my dad's dad, and I went down and spent some time with them last weekend, and like it wasn't convenient. It was annoying. I had to get down there after being in Brisbane, facilitating a wedding for one of my best bros, and I drove all the way back down that night to get to Kyogle, and I spent some time and I sat and I talked to my grandfather, and he was telling me stories of his grandfather coming over he snuck in on a boat from Ireland, and they found him stowed away, and he told me this story about how, they couldn't turn back because they'd gone too far. So he ended up in New Zealand and then Australia. And that's kind of how the lineage began here for us, was this guy stowed away, sneaking in. And I got to learn a little more from him, and he's on his way out. Like, he's definitely meeting death in a very slow way. And after being there, I there was moments where I was literally gulping down the grief of like, I'm learning these stories, and why haven't I learned them before? Why didn't I? Why is it now all of a sudden this urgency or this imminent death? Why is this? And I'm like, I was really struggling with it, man. But what came online after that on the drive home is I started listening to a lot of Irish folk music, man. I was listening to these songs, and it was like I was connected to this deep grief of like my grandfather passing, and I was feeling all of this like guilt and all of this, like I should have spent more time with him and all this stuff. And this music was just amplifying it and allowing it to just move through me. And that for me was like the most beautiful. I felt so open, and it was such a beautiful experience for me to like stay connected to that feeling and allow music to move it, like move with me, I guess. I don't know, but it was such a phenomenal experience of like staying connected to the feeling and then having something kind of guide it through me.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, man. Is that something that for you, like when you end up in a position where there's something that's sticky or that deeper vulnerability, like what is it for you, whether it's in relationship or, you do big work for the world, what do you turn to, or how do you find yourself being with it and then allowing it to move through you?
So I'll take some inspiration from you and share a story. Yesterday I was being a cunt to my wife. I don't know if I can use that word.
You can use that word.
Okay. I was being like unbearably narcissistic, pointing, but underneath I was moving with some really vulnerable territory that I couldn't find the solution to, and it was bouncing around inside of me. I couldn't access the depth of why it was so vulnerable for me. So the way that what usually happens for me is when I can't deal with it, I become an asshole to my wife because I haven't been able to actually take responsibility and access what is deeply vibrating and vulnerable for me. So this morning, actually, I went up to a place on the land to just, okay, what is this? I work with something called blank canvas, where I go and I meet my body, and I have no fucking idea about what I'm going to do. I just know that I want to get in touch with the feeling, and I'm going to move my body in a way that articulates, and then I'm going to get in contact with what's actually going on in there. And at one point I just realized there was a lot of fear that I was meeting in certain aspects of my work where there's a lot of responsibility for others, and I couldn't find the clear solution. So what happens was it was just vibrating in there, and I dumped it on her. So I actually danced for a moment with that fear. I got in contact with why it was what it was doing in my body, how it was restricting me. And I allowed myself to shape myself as that fear, to understand it, to get in contact with it. And then at one point, once I really accessed it, there was a moment of actually feeling the energy liberate. Feeling the energy actually move and coming back into trust of the moment, the aliveness of actually always what is, but usually I'm so invested in my own story that I disconnect to the aliveness of energy that's always accessible to me. So I got in contact with that energy, and then I actually went down and I said, sorry. You know, like, how powerful is it to take responsibility? Because what does a woman really want from us? To do our fucking work, to take responsibility for our shit so that we can show up to the aliveness of what intimacy really is purely just presence, uninterfered presence, which then cultivates the deepest intimacy, not any sort of fancy thing that's going to get you there. It's actually getting all the things out of the way so that the current of electricity, the current of presence, the current of truth can actually become one. And when we actually do our own work to clean out, actually what we're doing is we're cleaning out all the places that blocks intimacy from happening. And if we allow this, which is, it is the deepest work. You know, I can acknowledge, many things that I've done in my life, but it's my wife, it's my relationship that keeps calling me back to the humble truth of the reflection, the true reflection, which is in every moment, not in the peak, not in when I'm in front of others, but in the mundane, in the chop wood, carry water moments. How am I really showing up? Can I really take responsibility for the things that are actually restricting me from being who I know I am in the deepest parts?
Yeah, bro. I feel that's such an important thing to speak to, because a lot of men kind of see themselves as the provider or the protector. And that presence that you're talking about, like doing the work, for me, if I was to kind of sharpen the specific of the work, it's like the inner work, like get to know yourself deeply to a point where when you do meet your woman in a moment, you're bringing the truest version of yourself to her. And one thing that I've noticed in the guys that I roll with or work with, and myself at times, is I have like kind of created this container where I put my partner in there, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to look after the container, but I'm never going to actually step in and be in it with her. And I'm going to provide, and I'm going to protect, and I'm going to do all of the things to keep her safe, but I'm never really going to give her access to the deeper parts of me. So when you said do the work, I was like, that's really, the essence of my journey. It was like, man, I had to go into myself so deeply and access parts of me and kind of find the postures of closure, the postures of hurt, the postures of grief, and liberate them so I could open and arrive in the moment where I'm like, hey, I'm here. All of me in this moment that I know of is here. And the classic thing that I hear so many women say is like, he's so good at looking after all of these things, but I just can't feel him. I just struggle to feel. I can't feel. He's not, when he's here, he's not fully here. And I don't want to see that as I'm talking bad about men, because I know we've got to think about the bills and the traffic on the weekend and this and that, and there's so many things going on. But unless we make space for our work to reveal the deeper truth of who we are, I know I've missed so many moments, and that's been my lessons to be able to be like, okay, I'm going to be do the work so I can be fully here in the moment, which then brings alignment, not just to my relationship, but to how I serve the world, to how I make coffee in the morning, to how I walk down the street, to the enjoyment that I get to really, really revel in.
And I think, I just wanted to add one piece around the courage that it requires to really walk this path, because in the tradition that I work with, often will say to present yourself as you are. Now, really, to present yourself as you are is what your partner wants. She really wants to fit, because what is intimacy? And here's a interesting point. Intimacy is to penetrate inside. It's to bring something closer together. So if we present ourselves as we are, we're allowing our partner to look inside of us. And this is one of the keys. How do we, because we're a team, if we present actually what's underneath the surface, true intimacy emerges, baka, full stop. This is the doorway of true intimacy. Can I present to her how I am? There's nothing to do. This is the wild piece. This is like drop it all and see that actually, if I am presenting as I am, the energy will connect and activate. I need to share what's going on for me, because I need to let her in, just as she will share what's going on for her, which lets me in, which naturally creates intimacy. Now there's, let's just bring the simplicity of that for a moment. And of course, I acknowledge the complexity of how to actually get to those places, because often in life, based on what we have to earn and our different fears and all the different things, but they get in the way from what true intimacy is, which is letting ourselves be let in.
That's such an important piece to relating, man. That's such an important piece that I believe doesn't get enough airtime, especially for me in the work, like polarity, but this idea of like letting people in, like this intimacy of like let them in to see, that is such a courageous act. That's the thing that's cracked me open more than anything ever has. Like, and the fear, that the story that comes up for me is, what if she doesn't love me? What if this part of me is not good enough? What if? And there's a deep mistrust of the feminine still, there's still little twinges of that in me where I'm scared to trust her with that part of me. And I'm only just getting to know that. And that's why getting to know that part of me is super important, so I can learn to be with it and not need her to love it for me. And when I bring that, and it's happened so much with Meg being pregnant, man, like I've had all of my I'm not good enough come up, and I've had to be with that and learn about that and spend time. Can I be with this has been my mantra. That's allowed like some deeper letting in for Meg, and I've learnt, and like I'm learning how to almost like have this this dialogue, this somatic dialogue with my body, where I'm like, oh, cool. Oh, this is here. Feel it. The vulnerability. Okay, how do I go and deliver that appropriately to my woman? And I'm getting better at it. And like even hearing you talk about like taking yourself up to the land, blank canvas, what's here, and then be like, oh, go down and repair or reconnect through that vulnerability. Like that's art, man. For me, that's what it feels like. It feels like a beautiful, this is artwork. This is our artistry.
Yeah, it's so beautiful to name that in that way. And I think also we have to become masterful at renovating. We have to be incredible renovators of our perspective, renovators of our relationship to the subtle dynamics in our body, because the way that we reorganize and reconnect is through transforming the energy. Because in the end, presence is the doorway. But we have to articulate and renovate and reveal and release all the things that are blocking presence blossoming within the relating.
I feel like I just don't need to add anything to that. That's perfect, man. I want to slightly, I know we're sort of leaning towards the end of the podcast. I kind of want to do this thing, you've been saying how do we zoom out or go a bit general? We've really spoken about that in the relating stuff, but if we look at the world at large, when it comes to presence and connection to, and how you spoke about honoring a woman's seasons and the red tide and understanding the cycles of man in the white tide. How do you see this playing out on at the global scale, bro? And I don't want to make it too general, but I think there is you use this word of making love to life and pollinating. You said that quite a lot on the facilitator training, which I loved. But how do you see this this work influencing that more general way that we relate with Mother Earth as men, as humans on this planet? Tending to the garden of life. How do you see this? I guess see this work positively influencing how we move with the world.
Thanks so much for that question. And before we sat down, I put a glass of water in the center of the conversation that we're having. And wherever I go, whatever I do, I always will place the water, because water is life, and everything that the water touches, it brings life to. And we're in a moment where we need to get in contact with the original powers, which are earth, water, fire, and air. And just for a moment, I want to speak about the water, because you asked about how this is all connected. And the way I see it all connected is through water, because the movement of the red tide is a movement of water. The movement of the white tide is a movement of water. So when we understand how to move like a delta, so the delta is where all the river systems come into connection and start to move out towards the ocean. When we learn the invisible language of water, when we can actually renovate our perspective to see that even when we're seeing through water, because the lens of our eye is a water, is held in the water. So when we can start to go, hey, hang on a second, woman is the water. I am also, we say 70% in science. I would maybe argue it's more than that. We are water beings. So what does the water have to share to us? It has to share a symbiosis. It has to share a life-giving property. When we get in contact with and what is present here in the invisible field is that I am pollinating here with my brother, Jacob. There's a pollination happening, and it's through the water that I see this. When I make a choice to give life to something, to a center outside of myself, then there's a possibility for something new to be born. I see this as a time where humanity is going into crisis, which I think is a really important part of alchemy and transformation. Because through problems, incredible solutions are born. And when we really listen to the intelligence of water, which is give life to something, instead of seeing it as a competition, what if I saw that something, every moment that I have could be something to give life to? In this moment, we're giving life to a new conversation, and I've appreciated the depth that we've been able to traverse and the giving life to, and I give that credit to the water, because when I choose to see it through that lens, I'm going to give life to. then we are in for a very powerful time of transformation. What could I give life to instead of put down, shut down, push away? What if I embraced what is living inside of me and make the choice to receive the instruction of the water, which is give life to, flow with, expand into, connect with, harmonize, create geometry. And that for me is the teaching of all of what we've been speaking about. Intimacy is about true connection. If you want to talk about connection, let's talk about water, because it's the element that connects everything on this planet. And we are her. We are already inhabited by this profound intelligence. If you go to the Bible, have a look at how many times the water is shared. It's the most used word in that book. It is all of the mystery schools, all of the religions come from the ancestral traditions of the four powers. If you're looking for some inspiration, it will always come through these four powers. We are all related through these four powers. These are the guardians of the new time. And when we begin to inhabit the lens of these elements, we will remember ourselves. We will remember a new way of relating with each other, with our partnerships, within communities, because the answers are all actually in ourselves, in the waters of ourselves.
That feels like a pretty awesome place to finish on, man. Thank you. That felt almost like a prayer. Felt like, thank you, man. That means a lot to receive that from you and to be able to share with everyone that's listening.
Thanks so much for having me, brother. It's been such a pleasure.
Bro, is there anything else that's alive for you right now that needs to be shared?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Amazing. This has been a different tone for what we normally speak on, but it's been an honor to have you, bro, come in and speak to these deeper things that I believe are so necessary for us to expose ourselves to. So if you're keen to learn a little more about Velan or hear a little more about what he's up to, I'm going to post his Instagram handle in the show notes. That's the best way to get in contact with him. If you've got any questions, you can reach out to him there. Thank you for being a part of this really beautiful conversation. If you have any questions for me, you know where to get me at Instagram as well. And man, relationships are a really important thing. They are a really important thing, and may some of this work really land for you, and go out and practice it. Go out and be in the work of discovering more of who you are, and then bringing that to your partner, bringing that to the world, bringing that to your work. So much love. Bless up. Peace.